Okay, and welcome back. Or if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about me favorite movies, mostly horror, and me favorite music, mostly metal. And we are going to move on to day 3 of Wolf Week. Yes, I wanted it. I love it. It's time to do it. And we are going to be talking tonight, as if you did not know, we are going to be talking about dog soldiers. Now, this is the former release of the latest. There is a newer transfer release of Dog Soldiers. However, like they did with Platoon and Predator, the DNR is so terrible that they look like plastic people. They don't look real. So when I read all of the reviews at Blu-ray.com, when I wanted to upgrade my Dog Soldiers, because I was going to buy that newest release, and I was like, they were just like, oh, no. Have you ever seen Predator? The newest release, I think it's called the Hunter Edition. Have you ever seen what they did to Platoon? What Shout Factory or Scream Factory? No, Shout Factory did to Platoon. They were like, the DNR is applied so extremely that they look like they're not real. They look, very fake. And so, yeah, after looking at clips of both of them, I chose the older version. So if you want it, this is the version that I recommend of Dog Soldiers. And Dog Soldiers was released in 2002, directed by Neil Marshall of The Descent. Yes. And written by Neil Marshall. And it stars Sean Pertwee and Kevin McKidd, whom I know best from the HBO series Rome, 2 seasons, Rome. Oh my god, that was one of the best TV series ever. Cable. Rated R. Hard R. Very, very hard R. But the HBO series Rome is fantastic, and that's where I remember him most from. In this movie, he plays Cooper, the main soldier. And Emma Cleasby, who obviously plays Megan, since she's the only girl in the movie. Yeah. So like I said, it was released in 2002. And yeah, let's get started. The movie opens in the Scottish Highlands, where we see a couple messing around, and I guess maybe their anniversary or something, and she gives them this really beautiful box that's got a big silver knife in it, a big silver blade with hieroglyphs on it and stuff. It's very, very cool looking. They're messing around in the tent when it was a very scary scene, actually, mainly because of the way it was presented. And that is that she hears a noise and she looks, and because you would expect like shit to come through the tent or something. Instead, they hear a zipping noise, right? And she turns around, and he turns around and looks down, and it's like the tent is literally unzipping and coming up, and you're like, the fuck? And when they see, when it gets to the top, and they are, of course, brutally grabbed, attacked, and murdered, bloody, and stuff in it, and boom. We then are introduced to Commander Ryan. We see a guy running through a soldier running through the woods. He puts up a good fight. They catch him, and then we are introduced to Commander Ryan, and the soldier, Private Cooper. That's the guy from Rome. So he bitches him out a little. Well, you lasted 2 hours. That's good. Blah, blah, blah. But then he hands him the gun and is like, now shoot the dog. I mean, this is their dog, one of the hunting dogs. And he wants him to shoot the dog, and Cooper just refuses. And he's like, I'm not going to shoot the dog. Because, oh, what? You're a pussy. You don't want to shoot the dog. And he's like, no, I'm just not going to shoot that dog, and I'm not going to shoot that dog for no reason. So he fails. He's like, oh, well, you failed, then you can't be in it. And he's like, fuck you, I don't want to be in it then. If shooting a damn one of our own dogs, no. So that introduces their little tension. And we then flash to 4 weeks later where Cooper and another squad of about 8, I guess, are there, and they are in a face-off with that Special Forces team, Ryan. So we get introduced to Wells and Spoon and Terry and, that little group. And they are out there to try to, I guess it's war maneuvers, So a training exercise. We do see Ryan standing in the woods a little later, and something gets after him, and you really don't know whether he's dead or not. All you know is something attacked him. And the guys, there's a lot of war story talk. You get to, they do a really good job of introducing the characters and making you care about them individually. I liked Joe, always talking about footy, with rugby, footy. And so he was like a freak for that, and Cooper is great. I've always had a crush on him. And Ryan was cool. Not Ryan. The Commander Wells was cool. Spoon was cool. Joe. I mean, all of them. You really liked them as people. It was a fun bunch. And then you get this scare scene that nearly made me jump out the fucking chair. And as they're all sitting around the campfire, they've been telling these really intense stories. It's like a Sam Jackson moment from Deep Blue Sea. When all of a sudden this big giant cow, like a dead, mutilated cow, just crashes right in the middle of them next to the fire. And you are not expecting it because they've lulled you for 10 minutes into this story time. So you are not expecting that. Scares the shit out of them. Scared the shit out of me. And they can't radio out. They don't know what's going on. So the next day they start trying to do their job, to continue the exercise. Now this is where they locate and find the team, Brian's team. And it is nothing but it's a very disturbing scene. There are body parts everywhere, guts everywhere, stuff like that. And then Ryan himself pops up, whom Cooper immediately recognizes. And he is just ripped all to shreds, right? But he's still alive, and they help him get out. And they start trying to get away. They are then attacked by they don't hide these werewolves for too long. You see them pretty quickly, and I really love the werewolves in Dog Soldier. They're very unique, and I like the look of the werewolves in Dog Soldiers. So they're being attacked. We do lose one man at this point because, of course, there's got to be lots of kills. So all of your buds are going to go down one way or another. So we lose Bruce, I believe is the first one that we lose. And that was ugly. Especially the way he died. It really reminded me of Tucker and Dale. I think that's where Tucker and Dale got this. But Bruce, he fights with one of them, and he's running. And they don't show you what happened at first. But he's running, he runs out of ammo, he throws his gun down, he's running. And the next thing he's just oh, and blood comes out of his mouth and everything, and you think he just ran into the werewolf. But then when it panned out, he had actually just impaled himself on an outstretched tree limb. And I immediately saw the scene from Tucker and Dale, which was such a shocking scene. And I'm like, is this where what year was Tucker and Dale? I think I should check that. Because one or the other of them stole it from the other, because it was exactly the same thing. He ran into that. But then, of course, a werewolf got him and ripped him to shreds. So Wells comes upon the scene, fights with the creature, and that was gross as fuck. But he's like ripped right across the top of his stomach, so his stomach just kind of lays down and all of his guts are hanging out. And yet he's still alive. What a situation to be in. You know, to have to look down and see that. So Cooper comes up and he's like, get away, go away, run, y'all got to run. And he refuses. He's like, no, I'm going to help you. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about helping me? My guts are literally hanging out. And he's trying to like put them back in. And Wells is like, they're not going to fit. He's like, they're not going to fit. And he was like, they were in there before. They'll fit. That was great. Oh, shit. I didn't laugh that much when it happened, but I'm just thinking about it. That was fucking excellent. But they managed to get him up, and they're like running, and there's all this shit. It's very, very exciting chase scene and fight scene when they see a van. So they're having to carry two injured people, Wells and Ryan. So this Jeep comes, they see the headlights of a Jeep, and they run out there in front of it, and they manage to get in. The wolf's trying to get through the top, and they're stabbing it, stuff like that. And it's a woman. And they end up going back to this house, and they go into it and clear it. And it's like everyone had just left, like there's stuff boiling on the stove. Dinner is like laid out. Dinner plates are like laid out and stuff. So it's a very weird scene because like nobody's there, but yet it looks like someone just walked out the front door. Which we'll find out later. So they get settled in, and look how I haven't even followed my notes at all. Okay, so they start trying to get settled in, and what are we going to do? And she tells them that the closest town is 4 hours away, and the closest other home is 50 miles away. So they're like up shit creek without a boat, not to mention a paddle. So, that's all some really good dialogue, and they keep coming up with these different ideas. They need to get they need to get Wells to a doctor, but when they go out there and try to do it in the truck, they can't, because, the wolves have lifted up and destroyed the workings of it. So under the bonnet, it had ripped all the electric stuff up. So that was out. So they have to go back in, and what are we going to do about Commander Wells? Well, he asked her, does she have super glue and whiskey? So she's like, sure, I can come up with that, which is when I first was like, this bitch lives here, what do you mean? Sure, I can do, I'm sure I can find that. How would you know if it's not your place? So that was my first bit of suspicion about her. Then they end up super gluing his stomach. And you get some interesting trivia, because Cooper was like, you do know that superglue was not created to, for you to glue your grandmother's china back together. Superglue was created by the military to patch up wounded soldiers in the field. That's the reason why if you get that shit on your hand, you're basically going to walk around like this for 3 days. So, I'm like, is that true? I have to Google that, but it does make sense. So they ended up knocking him out, and after he got drunk, and they super glued his stomach, so everything was fine. Then you go through this well, we've got 6 hours till sunrise. The fight scenes the siege. It's a siege. The wolves are outside. They have the dog soldiers. The werewolves are outside. Now, so the siege is phenomenal. There's just, these dudes fight like motherfuckers to keep them things out the house. And the whole time, of course, they're like screaming at Ryan, like, what the fuck is going on? And he won't tell them. Because, back when they first found him, when they found the camp and they found him, the only thing he kept screaming was there was only supposed to be one. There was only supposed to be one. This is like when he was on death's doorstep, right? He kept screaming that, which kind of made you go, what's he mean by that? There was only supposed to be one what? And they even asked him that. So now that, it's a little flashback for you. So they're like, they know he knows more than what he's letting on, right? So you get to see all these really, really cool efforts by them to keep these damn things out of the house. And they do manage to hold off the siege. And we have some downtime where some more of the story plays out. And that is them really going after Ryan. Like, me personally, I would have been like, look, dude, okay, this is the skinny on this situation. You want the 411, here it goes. You will either look across that table. They did kind of do that, but not in the way I would have done it. He gave up before. I would have just done this from the beginning. I would have just been like, look, you will give us the 411 of this situation and what you're doing here and what this was all about, or we are going to take you still tied to that chair and set you outside. Okay? Rover, dinner time. That's what I would have told him, like right then. It's like, it's over, it's done, this is it. I don't care. You wanted me to shoot a dog, I'm fixing to end you. All right, you either tell me what's going on, or we are going to set you outside the door for food, still tied to that chair. They didn't have to go that far. They did all other kind of screaming, which I wouldn't have bothered with. I would have just done that. So he finally tells them, okay, I came here intentionally. We heard all the rumors, which Megan had also admitted. She was like, I've lived here for 2 years. The reason that I'm here is because I heard those rumors and I wanted evidence, the people being killed in the Scottish Highlands by some monster. So he was like, the military sent us to investigate. We found out it was real. We were sent here to capture one. And they're like, okay, so this wasn't a military exercise of the special forces versus us. So what were we doing here? You've explained what you were doing here. But if you were here to catch them, to catch one with your team, what are we doing here? And he said, okay, fine. You're not going to like the answer, but the simple fact is, and he admits that they were there as bait. And that really sends Cooper off the deep end, because he's like, these are my friends, and you've gotten them all killed because you wanted to catch something for your military purposes, and you got all my friends killed, and you brought us out here to die as bait. Well, yeah, but now I'm in the same situation too, he says. But that's when one of the other guys, I'm not sure which one, Spoon or Joe or somebody, was like, how come he looks so much better than he did when we came in here? And Ryan is like, Cooper is like, yeah, why is that? You were ripped to shreds and knocking on death's door when we found you, and yet now you don't seem to be in pain. You seem to be, your color's back. You look really good. You look like, you're running your fucking mouth like you ain't got no problems in the world. What's up with that? And he's like, let me see your wounds. And they reached over there and he tried to fight them, but that didn't last long. He did manage to get the gun, and one of them, Terry, I think it was. But anyway, Terry like puked on his head, which kind of like took the wind out of his anger cell for a minute and allowed Cooper to get the gun from him. Because it's like, you're all badass and all of a sudden somebody pukes on your head. You're like, what the fuck? That was really cool. Which gave Cooper time to grab the gun. And they ripped his stuff away and his wounds were healed. Right? And then that's when, he was like, okay, some shit's up, obviously. I don't really know what, but yeah, okay. So they keep, going through all of this, trying to figure out these different plans. That's when Megan comes in, right? And she's like, she yells at Ryan in a certain way, like, oh, would you just shut up, Ryan, of that. But Cooper really notices that the way she talked to him seemed like you would only talk to a person that you knew. And she then admitted that when they had come out the first time to investigate this situation, that she does know him, that she was part of their team trying to track these things down. So Cooper's just sort of like, fucking females, you're all liars. He has a little gender moment there where he talks about that. So she then tells them, as a zoologist, that, the wolves like to stay in one place, that they're, that they like to have like a home base, and that she thinks it's the barn out there. Because they had tried another plan where there was another vehicle in the barn, and Joe had went out there to get it, and they did this really cool, you distract them while I go get the van. And he did that, and he managed to get the van, and right when he was out there, though, there was one of those things, and it had Terry, and it ripped his head off and threw it at him and stuff. So that was a pretty cool scene, too. He managed to get the van back to the door, backed up to the door, but then one of those things was in the van, and it ripped him to shreds. And when Cooper and them did open the door, and then open the van, it was like soup, right? I mean, he was like in pieces, and it was just like flowed out. And that was pretty cool. Very gross, but cool. So that ended that plan. So they could never come up with a plan to do anything. But they kept trying. I mean, every time I would think of something, I would like, why don't y'all try this? They would actually come up with it themselves. Almost like they were hearing me, which was interesting. I do like to get into my movies. But they did come up with this plan to go blow up the barn. So that was a really cool scene, and they did blow up the barn. And Cooper managed to make it back. So you've got Cooper and Wells and Spoon, I think was the three that were left now, because everybody else had been picked off in these siege attacks, and in these failed plans of theirs to escape. So you've got Megan, and you've got Ryan and Wells. Well, Ryan, was that before or after the barn? It was after the barn. So the next thing that happens, you've got Wells and Ryan and Cooper and Spoon and her. That's all that's left. So Ryan is sitting there, and they start going after him again, where he then sort of like, you have no idea how fucked you are. And he turns. He becomes one of those things. His teeth falls on the floor, then stands up, and he's a dog soldier, and there's like this big fight with them. They almost kill him, but he manages to jump out the window and go join the other wolves. Then, like I said, no, that was right before the barn incident. So then the barn incident, they all get back in there, And that's when Megan has a surprise for them, which, wasn't really a. Well, it was. No, it wasn't. I think I had figured it out. But we'll put it this way, I wasn't like super surprised when she said it, but that's when Cooper, who's a very smart guy, and he's sort of like calculating all this in his head, and he puts it up and he's like, you're from here. This is these pictures and stuff. You're not in them, that's correct. But that's because you were taking these pictures. You're part of this family that live here. Y'all are the werewolves. And she was then like, yeah, well, I guess she figured it out. And she was like, and while y'all were doing your little shit, I let them all in because, I'm just a woman and it's that time of the month. And all these dog soldiers, all these werewolves raise up behind her, and she's just basically tells them that it's dinner time and that it was the whole plan all along for her to go out there and find them. Ryan wasn't involved at that time, but that she was one of them and that was her plan to bring home dinner. So, boom, we have a bunch more fights again. Cooper and Wells end up upstairs, and Spoon ends up in the kitchen. Spoon's death scene was phenomenal. That boy, my God, did that boy kick ass, right? If you have ever heard the words fought for his life or fought for her life, that boy fought for his life, right? That was one of the most longest, drawn out, ass-kicking scenes of someone trying to stay alive that I have ever seen. He threw everything, including the kitchen sink, at that motherfucker trying to stay alive. And when it finally ended, you were so disappointed because you were like, wow, man, that is like working to survive, and it still didn't work, right? But that was funny because even though he knew now that it was over, this werewolf is holding up against the wall, with his face, and he's like nose to nose with it, and all Spoon says is, I hope I give you the shits. it's like, that's it, baby. Go out with a fuck you, okay? If you're gonna go out with a fuck you. And it was just like, I hope I give you the shits. And it, of course, ripped the shit out of him, and he's dead. And Wells and Cooper up there, they are doing everything. Now, by this time, Wells, he has already admitted, this was a little earlier, but he had admitted, I think it was when they were planning the barn explosion, Wells and Cooper had this little heart-to-heart where Wells was like, let me do all of this. Let me take all of the risk because I'm gone. And Cooper was like, no, you're not. You're fine. And he's like, I feel great. And you know what that means. I had my guts hanging out earlier. I feel fantastic. And then he like pulled his thing about it and it was healed. There was a scar across there where it had healed. And so you were like, oh, yeah, that's right. If it happened to Ryan, it was going to happen to him too, right? So, he stayed good to the end, though. That was cool, He was not going to turn into a bad guy. So, they, go through walls in the house trying to escape these things, First they're in a closet and they break through the wall into the next room, and then he shoots and breaks through the floor into the kitchen where they see what's left of Spoon. And then, I think, Commander Wells comes up with this final plan, and that is I'm done. I can feel it, and it don't feel good, and it's coming right now. So he shoots the floor and is you go through the floor into the basement, and I'm going to end this up here, and there's really nothing else that we can do. Now get over it. And and they even told each other, I love you, I love you, but you have to go. This is no option situation here. I am turning right now into one of these motherfuckers. So he like cuts the struggling, but he cuts the gas and the propane, the gas in the stove. He cuts the hose, and he's sitting there with a lighter, and he waits for them all to come in. Now Cooper is down there in the basement, and he waits for them all to come in, and then he tries to light it, but it knocks it out of his hand. But that doesn't work because he's got it lit up top. So he reaches up there and he blows the whole house up. So that kills all of them. And Megan, if you're wondering what happened to Megan, when she first started transforming, after she like did the ha-ha, I'm Little Red Riding Hood and brought you all home to eat, they took care of her right then and there because they shot her right, I think it was it Cooper? One of them like blew her brains out the back of her head, so she was taken care of right there. So they were all blown up, and Cooper's down there in the bottom. Nobody's left but him and the dog, the real dog. And he runs into these bodies like hanging up, pieces of bodies, that they've got hang up in the basement. And all of a sudden, it's not over like you thought it was, because we forgot about Ryan, and Ryan was down there in the basement, still had this big sword through him where they had impaled him with a sword. So him and Cooper start fighting, and Ryan almost gets him, but the dog attacks Ryan, which gives Cooper, who through the corner of his eye had seen this bayonet-looking thing. And when he got closer to it, we understand there is that silver knife. Because, they had hunted for silver in the house, and there was none. Why would a house full of werewolves have any silver in the house, right? But these backpackers and stuff that they obviously feed off of. So we remember. He sees that knife, and we're like, oh, that's the knife the girl gave the dude at the beginning, this big, long silver blade. So he manages to get that and ends up stabbing Ryan through the Ryan through the chest. And it starts like burning him and stuff like that, which he then takes the moment to then blow his brains out as well. And then him and the dog climb up and walk out into the sunlight. A couple hours later, he sits there down in the basement. Then he notices that light is coming in over there. He climbs up, and him and the dog walk off, and that's Dog Soldiers. 9 out of 10. Might even be a 10 out of 10. I don't know. My things change upward the more times I watch them. But, Dog Soldiers, fantastic werewolf movie for any werewolf collector. You have to have Dog Soldiers, man. There is the dialogue. You can definitely see the way that this was written, the story, how good it is, the dialogue, the cinematography, the whole setup. You can definitely see that it's by the guy from The Descent. Because The Descent is a fantastically scary, awful horror movie. It's wonderful. And this is absolutely wonderful as well. So, 2002, Dog Soldiers. Cinematography is wonderful. The direction is wonderful. Whoever wrote that, well, he wrote it. Neil Marshall, right? I said that. He wrote it, and let me tell you, the dialogue in this is snappy. Snappy. I love the dialogue in this. Whether it's the scene where Will's saying, they won't fit back in. They were in there before, they'll fit back in. The dialogue is just perfection in this movie. When they do have quips with each other. But this way, and not for the reasons you may think, but I would love to just like spend all weekend with Wells, Commander Wells, and that squad. I would love to just sit and listen to them talk all weekend. They were really cool. It's a really cool set of characters that Neil Marshall wrote in this movie. So, yeah, if you don't have this in your collection, you really should. This is my recommended release of it. This release does come with the Blu-ray and the DVD, so you can have them both for quick access. And yeah, Dog Soldiers, whichever version you get, according to what you like. There is a newer transfer release of it, but I prefer this one, just like I prefer the previous to the last release of Predator. I prefer the previous to the last release of this as well as Platoon. I would not want that Shout Factory version. It's like it looks almost animated, like really good animation, but it looks like they're not real. The DNR, which is called digital noise reduction, if you didn't know. But the DNR is applied so aggressively that the movies just don't, some of these Blu-ray releases look terrible. They apply digital noise and the cleanup, but they apply it so aggressively, they take out all of the grain, they take out all of the film, which then ends up making the people on it look fake, the scenery look fake. It just doesn't look real. So this is my recommended version of Dog Soldiers, is this release. You can remember the photo. And yeah. And I will see you in the next one. I have filmed these 3. The next day or 2 I will film the others. And yes, I am loving rewatching my my werewolf movies. And I will see you in the next one. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Wrong mouse. Not this one. This one. But I will see you in the next one. And thank you very much for stopping by and checking it out. Please let me know your thoughts on Dog Soldiers. If you have seen it. If you haven't seen it. If you want to see it. If you don't. I think you're missing out on a very, very big treat if you're a werewolf fan to not see or have or at least see. And you are very special. You're not a military special ops guy person, who has been transformed into a werewolf. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.